Maybe never.
I can never tell. And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's workshop. If you've never joined us for one of these before, we've done several in the past. You can find, we've got some on like plot, character, world. The workshop format we developed as an opportunity to dig deep into one specific writing topic and hopefully provide something a little deeper than the beginner level, which is usually a little harder to find for free on the internet. Most importantly, though, this is an excuse for me to develop a slideshow. So let me get my screen shared.
Megan says we developed this as if she's the one that puts in like so much work to these things. These are all Megan flexing her. Look at all the things I can talk about intelligently for a very long time. I have read so many writing books. Look at me go.
I gotta make it count. Like I've spent a lot of money on these writing books, so I need to make it worth it somehow.
Worth it in a way that is not financially incentivized to you personally.
No, because no one's given me book deals yet. So all I have are these slideshows. Tonight's topic is theme. This is one I've always wanted to do, but have been a little intimidated by, because back in 2014, when all the writing advice was prescriptive, the advice seemed to be, don't worry about theme until you revise, because if you think too much about it, your book will be preachy and everyone will hate it. And 2014 Megan was really good at following prescriptive writing advice. And so she did not think about theme very closely because she did not want her books to sound preachy. I do think that if you consume a lot of stories, theme is something that it kind of seeps through into your writing unintentionally. And so I think it is, especially when you're at a more beginner level, easy to think that if it's going to naturally appear, then you don't need to think about it too much. However, in my experience, the stories that stick with people the most have themes that are both expertly and very intentionally crafted. So we are going to dive right in. And after I say hello to everyone who's here. Hello, welcome. Hi, Jo Catherine. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Crazy Foxy. Hi, Cinder. Welcome. Say hey in the chat if you're here. Let us know, how does theme affect you in your personal life? I also wanted to give a top of the chat reminder that in a couple weeks, we're talking about the Encyclopedia of Fairies. If you like this breakdown, we're going to do a breakdown of this book to try and figure out why, using science, it was a really good book that we all liked. So don't forget to read that or reread it or just show up. We'll spoil it, but it'll be fine. It'll be a good chat anyway. Let's dive right into what is theme and do you need it? So theme can be summed up as the underlying message or central idea of your story. It's usually the life lesson that your character has to learn or struggle with. And it can typically be boiled down to a single word or a single line. For example, grief, parenthood, nostalgia, coming of age. John Truby talks about this in The Anatomy of Story. He says, the theme line is your view about right and wrong actions and what those actions do to a person's life. A theme line is not a highly nuanced expression of your moral vision. He gives some examples, like A Christmas Carol. The theme line is a person lives a happier life when he gives to others, or 4 Weddings and a Funeral. When you find your true love, you must commit to that person with your whole heart, or It's a Wonderful Life. the theme is riches come not from money that you make, but from friends and family that you serve. So yeah, very like almost stereotypical life lessons. Gerald DePago said, sometimes you can have something you might call pure entertainment and theme is not very important. But if you want to do more than just entertain, if you want to entertain and enrich, inspire, or say something about the world and the human condition, then you have to think about what you want to say in order to subtly weave it through the story. My personal opinion is that even those stories that you think are just there for entertainment, they also have themes. It's just maybe not as overt as death. And so I think there's something to be gleaned from all the stories, even the ones you think they're just there for pure enjoyment. So as a warm-up exercise to get us kind of thinking about theme, we're going to take 5 minutes to list a few. Oh, did I say this at the top? We have exercises during these workshops. So we're going to warm up with this one, and then we'll have some exercises geared more toward your works in progress. So for the warm-up, list a few of your favorite books, movies, TV shows, and or video games. What do you think the themes were for each of those? And you can put them in the chat too if you would like. You don't have to, but if you'd like. So I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock. 30 more seconds. Hi, time. Does anyone want to share any of their examples?
So I've been thinking a lot about Game of Thrones this weekend because apparently someone called out George R. R. Martin at a panel at like Gen Con or something, like, "Hey, you gonna write this book or not?" So I just got me thinking about it again. And I'm sure, I don't know what he said. He got booed because George Sanderson was there as well on a panel, and the person had asked if he was just gonna like wait till he dies and let Brandon Sanderson write it, and then booing ensued. And I don't know if the booing was directed at like Brandon. It seemed apparently it was directed like kind of Brandon Sanderson and not just at the person asking the rude question. Anyway, because anytime that comes up, I just go and calculate how many words per day George R. R. Martin could have written every day since the last book came out in order to finish it. Anyways, actual theme of Game of Thrones, power, all of that. But I was trying to put together in my head something about like the theme both in the story and out of it of like you can have the best thing going, you could be doing so good at your job, and then if you don't stick your landing, the ending's ruined, because it like works for Daenerys and the show. So that's where my head went the whole time. I was just like putting this thesis together in my head. It was not very helpful.
Well, I was thinking of Blood Over Brighthaven, because that I think has some pretty meaty themes in it. So like the idea of you wanting to succeed and you're someone who's from like a minority group, so you really are just trying to fit in with the majority group so that you can achieve what you want to, but then realizing that that can come at the expense of others, and like where do you fall in that line? So that's what I was thinking of.
Nice.
I went down a little rabbit hole of thinking about like superhero movies, which is a genre that I do really love, and how that seems like it could be a genre that's very much like entertainment for entertainment's sake, but actually like how for me the ones that are standouts in the genre actually revolve very heavily around themes. So I'm thinking about like specifically this year, like after kind of having like a little bit of a slump in terms of the superhero movies, I really, really enjoyed Thunderbolts, which has like a very strong like depression, mental illness is best handled together theme. Like it's a very, very strong theme, as well as like the new Superman movie, which not only has a very strong theme, but it's like pretty overtly stated when he's just like, maybe kindness is the real punk rock. And to me, like those are a lot better than like some of the other movies that I was thinking about that just like didn't have as clearly expressed themes.
Yeah, totally. We've got in the comments, Crazy Foxy mentioned the Wizard of Oz theme being be happy with what you have, and the movie Up, the theme being let go of your past so you can move on with your life. Andrew mentioned Avatar, The Last Airbender, having themes of balance, genocide, and coming of age. And Nicole mentioned Dead 11 being about grief. I was thinking in particular about Emily Wilde, and one of the themes being like finding community, and like you really can't do it all on your own. Yeah, theme is everywhere.
On the topic of grief, because that is definitely one that like I find really interesting. And how do we describe it? Like, because so many of them are more like lessons or like slightly broader ideas versus just like grief as a theme. Of like, I guess there's like you dig a little deeper and there's more of like a lesson on it, but like
how it affects people differently.
Yeah, and it depends on
or
the
just maybe just being
thing.
cathartic, maybe like
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, the themes of grief are almost always like, how do you keep going, knowing that like everyone is going to feel that at some point, and so books that explore grief are just ways that we see, well, how does this kind of person deal with that? How does this kind of person, and it like makes us reflect on, well, how would I deal with that? Sometimes in a cathartic way because someone has lost like the same kind of figure as you, and sometimes in a I know this pain will come sort of way. Yeah, I'd be curious if anyone has any thoughts in chat too.
It's like my brain goes to Hill House on most things.
Oh, I'm gonna bring up Hill House. I believe I put in my notes. Where did I write it? Let's see. Yeah, in parentheses, it says, you know, I had to bring it up right after.
All right.
Also, shout out to romance novels. They often have like a theme of
Yes.
like learning to love yourself or like to accept something in a partner that maybe you thought you wouldn't accept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finding love for yourself in things that like you never thought you could. So when can you develop theme? There are 3 times when you could work on developing your theme while plotting. Many premises have a theme kind of inherent in them. I'm thinking like The Last of Us, you know, like how far would you go to save the one you love? Like that was part of the premise of the story from the beginning. You can also think of it while drafting. The theme comes as you get to know the story. Sometimes while you're writing the first draft, you think like, oh, that's it. That's the theme. A character says something and you realize like, oh, that's what I've been exploring this whole time. Or during revisions. Sometimes you discover the theme after the entire story is written. So I was curious, do you all have a time that you typically really delve into theme in your own work?
I feel like I've had each of those just for different books. I think some books I like go in with a really clear, like, this is what this story is going to be. Maybe most typical for me is that I go with like a really broad level idea of theme into plotting that then gets refined while I'm drafting. So like, you know, during plotting it may be like, oh, I really want to write about like, well, I'm just thinking of like the most recent book I revised that was kind of this, where I kind of went in with an idea of like, this is going to be a book about like, so it's a romance. It's about like accepting, you know, or finding people who love you the way you are, or like something really broad like that I went into. And then like, as I was revising, just got like very clear, like ideas about like, no, this is like very specifically what I'm trying to say about like these more broad concepts of like acceptance and individuality and whatever.
Yeah, I would agree that for me, I look at character arc when I'm plotting out a book, and often it's like the lie that the character believes and like the truth that they need to learn is very often tied to theme, even if you decide to change it later in revisions or whatever. But I think that's probably the first time that I interact with theme when it comes to a project.
Yeah, totally.
It's definitely changed for me over time. Back when I was actually like writing a lot of books, I feel like it was always something that happened while drafting. Like as I got to know the characters more and figured out what was happening with them alongside the plot. Whereas now I definitely find that there's themes I want to write about and have ideas around those. And from there, it goes nowhere. But that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think that reflects my experience a lot too. Like when I was writing a lot, I wasn't really taking the time to think too much about it. But now that I am not writing a zillion books all at once every year, I have become a bit more intentional when picking things that I'm doing. A book that I found unexpectedly helpful while preparing for this was Writing for Emotional Impact by Carl Iglesias. Yeah, overall, I was really surprised by how much I liked this book on writing. And he talks about, he says, although it's generally accepted that themes becomes clear after writing several drafts, the reality is knowing your theme up front is a huge time saver in the rewriting process. Don't panic, however, if you have no idea what your theme is. There are just as many writers who write several drafts to discover what they want to say. theme is by far the most complex aspect to grasp in any story. Finding it before writing is ideal, but other times you may have to write the script or the book to discover the theme. So yeah, there's no right or wrong time. However, the 2014 advice to not think of it is definitively wrong.
And sometimes readers find themes in your work that you didn't think were there to begin with.
I think about that all the time. In the first creative writing class I ever took in college, we were analyzing each other's short stories. And this guy, he had written this short story about these like people who lived up in the clouds, and this guy fell out of the sky. And we probably spent 20 minutes dissecting it. Like, oh, and I loved how you did this. I loved like this theme. It was so good, so powerful. And then the teacher looked at him and was like, so did you intend that? And he was like, nope.
Before we move on, Megan, Misty K asked for the title and author of that.
Oh, yeah. It's Writing for Emotional Impact by Carl Iglesias. It is geared towards screenplays, like most books on writing are, but I found it really great. And I've used it in several of our workshops now. And so we're going to move into another exercise. We are going to spend 10 minutes on this one. Take 10 minutes to think about your current work in progress. Write down a few themes that you think might fit the story you've created. If you're sure of what your theme is, dig deeper into why you think that is the theme, or try to flesh it out some. If you're not quite sure what your theme or themes could be yet, explore why each theme idea could be the theme of your story. So we will check back in at the 36. time. We had some good conversation happening in the chat. Andrew said, I think other people finding unintended themes in your writing is one of the coolest things about being a writer. There may be things floating to the surface of your mind you don't even notice. I totally agree. Even just going back and looking at old stuff that you've written can be really illuminating. Just be like, wow, I was really processing something there.
I feel like it could also be one of the most obnoxious things about being a writer, of like, if you're very successful and suddenly they're studying you in English classes and stuff, and like people are making big assumptions about what you meant to do with the thing, and it's like, no, like you are digging deeper than what is here. I'm like, it's great if they can pull something personally, but it's not necessarily always something that was in your head.
I've been thinking that a lot recently with like the Taylor Swift album announcement, which, like, don't get me wrong, which first of all, I'm very, very excited about, very excited. And not that she never leaves Easter eggs or hints at things or whatever, but I think a lot of the things that people are just like, she's such a mastermind. She called this years in advance. It's like, maybe she did. She is brilliant, but also maybe some of it is just like she is writing about an album about like these concepts that have just been rattling around in her brain for a while. Will I engage in all of the clowning despite that, though? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't really care if she meant it. It's like, it's now part of the lore.
Missy Kate said, it's funny how themes can get mixed in with tropes like found family. And Nicole said, I think tropes can be themes readers know they like. Once they become more and more commonplace, they're labeled as tropes. Definitely. So next, we're going to talk about keeping themes subtle. Show, don't tell is actually pretty solid advice for theme. Typically, we say, oh, don't stress too much about show, don't tell. But in this one instance, it can be really good to think about this. And I think the don't stress about theme advice mainly stems from this, because if you're telling a lot, then people aren't going to resonate with your theme. Carl Iglesias, in Writing for Emotional Impact, he has 9 suggestions of ways to keep themes subtle. And so we're going to go through those. It's already getting a little late, so I won't delve too deep into all of them. But the first is turn theme into a question, not a premise. So going back to The Last of Us as an example, thinking about like, oh, it's zombie apocalypse, but also the question, how far would you go? You could wrap it around an emotion and develop its related idea. So for example, if you know you want to explore anger, you could look at the things that typically are tied to or create anger, like injustice or abuse. Or if you want to explore curiosity, then you could combine it with things like loss of innocence or coming of age. And as you try to make these combinations, then characters and scenes, they kind of materialize. Number 3, you could make it about the protagonist's inner need and journey to change. Pretty self-explanatory. Next slide. You can convey positive through the protagonist and negative through the antagonist. We're going to talk a lot more about this in a minute, but he gave the example of in Raiders of the Lost Ark, when he and the villain are having drinks and the villain kind of monologues about like, you and I are very much alike. Archaeology is our religion, yet we've both fallen from the pure faith. Our methods have not differed as much as you pretend. I'm a shadowy reflection of you. Like, such a strong way to show these two people coming at the same thing in different ways. You could also convey theme through a subplot. So show it through something that is happening simultaneously with the main plot. This makes me think a lot of Barrington Welk in The Raven Boys. I think he's also a great example of number 4, because he's kind of like what Gansey could have been if he let this like pursuit really consume him and bring out negative traits instead. Number 6, have each character reveal a facet of the overall theme. So look at your entire cast and how can they each explore different aspects of this theme. Number 7, present the opposite argument as powerfully as your truth. And number 8, weave it into the dialogue, bearing in mind that you don't want to state the theme too directly when you're putting it in dialogue, lest it seem heavy-handed. And number 9, communicate it through images, leitmotifs, and colors. I think this one can be really, really fun in writing in particular. I guess like leitmotifs maybe a little bit less. That's really powerful in film. That's when like the same musical refrain comes up with a certain character. But definitely with like color and imagery, having things repeat or using color to convey how characters are feeling and stuff, it feels more subtle in writing than it does in, say, a film or a TV show or something. And I think that can be really, really fun to play with. In Save the Cat, which is a really common beat sheet that screenwriters use, one of the beats is theme stated. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I really like Jessica Brody's Save the Cat Writes a Novel, where she takes Save the Cat, the screenplay book, and adapts it for novelists. So this beat typically happens at about the 10% point of the book. And what it is it happens at about the 10% mark. It delicately plants the seed of theme in the reader's mind. Someone, usually another character, but it could also be like a billboard or something the character hears on the radio. Somehow this theme is stated and we kind of move on. The character doesn't even really notice that that is something that's going to be really important to them later. In Save the Cat Writes a Novel, she says, you don't want to shout the theme from the rooftops or spend 5 pages delving into it. You just want to delicately plant the seed in the reader's brain. Basically, by having a character subtly state the theme of the novel, you are giving the reader a subconscious hint as to what your story is really going to be about. It's a single scene beat, comes and goes quickly. For example, in the Shawshank Redemption, when he says like hope is a dangerous thing, that's about the 10% point. I was also thinking of in the September House when the spooky ghost maid about the 10% mark. That's the first time you hear her say needs must when the devil drives, which is not overtly the theme. Like it's not like hitting you over the head with it, but it is very much the thing that we keep coming back to again and again and again. And as a reader, you don't think about it that much because she's saying a lot of weird stuff and she looks very dead. That brings us to exercise. Our next exercise, we're going to spend 10 minutes. Try writing a scene or editing an existing scene at about the 10% point of your story. Find a way to subtly state the theme or lesson your character has to learn. So we will check back in at the 54. And time. Usually when we do these workshops during the example time, my mind just goes blank. I just sit there the whole time. But I actually had kind of fun with that one.
Yay!
Got to draft a little bit. Next
I spent
up.
the entire time reading the chapters that would hit percentage-wise and be like, oh, there's nothing here.
Now you know what to put there.
Yes.
Alright, so moving into our kind of final segment of the evening. I used a lot of books to prepare for tonight. I talked a bit about Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. I also have talked a lot about Writing for Emotional Impact by Carla Iglesias. I also used Story Engineering by Larry Brooks, and I tried going through Story Genius and Wired for Story, which people recommended a couple weeks ago. I didn't have as much time as I would have liked to really dive into those, but I did really enjoy them. But for me, one book always comes out on top when it comes to depth and descriptiveness, and it's The Anatomy of Story by John Truby. This shit is so hard to read, but it's the closest we've got to like a full actual textbook. So in my opinion, it's very worth it. There's a reason he's referenced so often, and he's quoted quite a lot in every workshop that we've done. He has a lot of thoughts on theme, and we're going to go over just a few of them. He refers to theme really often as the hero's like moral decision. He says in chapter 5, the classic strategy for dramatizing the hero's moral line is to give him a moral flaw at the beginning and then show how his desperation to beat the opponent brings out the worst in him. In short, he has to get worse before he gets better. Slowly but surely, he becomes aware that his central moral problem comes down to a choice between two ways of acting. No matter how complex the actions of the characters over the course of the story, the final moral decision brings everything down to a choice between two, and it is final. This makes me think of in The Haunting of Hill House, the TV series, the moment at the end when all of the adults are brought back into the house, and they're kind of fed these illusions that the house specializes in that makes it so that they don't have to look so much at their grief. They don't have to feel it. Which is kind of the thing they've all struggled with for the whole time. And then they have to make this choice, either succumb to the house or face the trauma and the grief that they experienced in the house. On the total opposite end of the film spectrum, in Legally Blonde, Elle has to choose to accept what's been said about her after she has this major setback with the professor that she trusted, or choose to believe in herself and use the parts of her personality and her femininity that people have criticized her for before as a strength in the courtroom. Truby also talks about in this chapter the importance of taking your theme from just an idea into your plot. So like in that first line, he says dramatizing the hero's moral line. That means taking it from more than just an idea and making it part of the story. And he says this requires that you split the moral argument into a set of oppositions. You then attach these thematic oppositions to the hero and his opponents as they fight. We talked about this in a few of the examples from Writing for Emotional Impact as well. I'm such a huge fan of John Truby's character web theories. I need to make this diagram myself. Every time we do one of these, I end up Googling it and finding it, and then I hate this diagram or this rendition of the diagram. But I wanted to do a quick review of his four-corner opposition character web in case you've missed our character workshops. So a quick review that will be important for this next segment is that you create a hero and a main opponent plus at least two secondary opponents. Each person is as different from the others as possible within the confines of your story, and they all attack the main character's weakness from a different angle. This doesn't necessarily mean that every character is an enemy of your protagonist. It just means that they're crafted to highlight a different angle of the character's flaw or the thing that they are trying to overcome that they want. So this person could be a character's friend. It could be their mom. It doesn't necessarily have to be like just these are 3 people that they hate. It's just people who challenge your character. So knowing that. Truby says, your moral argument will always be simplistic if you use a 2-part opposition like good versus evil. Only a web of moral oppositions can give the audience a sense of the moral complexity of real life. Again, The Haunting of Hill House. You've got 5 siblings who experience the same house, but they all react to it in ways that create conflict for each other. Even though she's dead, to me, Nell is very much like she's the main character. She's the heart of that show. And if you analyze the way all of her siblings react to the traumas that they experienced in the house and the grief of losing their mother, you can see how it directly affects Nell's perceptions of reality and how she copes with her own grief and trauma. Truby has, if he's going to have something, it's going to be a weird little diagram. So he does have a diagram for the theme as well. And let me pull it up in the book. We can talk about it. So he says, at the beginning of your story, you set the hero and opponent in opposition. So you can see we've got hero on one side. You can see my cursor. Hero on one side, opponent on the other. And the audience, because the conflict is not intense and the audience doesn't yet know how the values of each come into conflict, they have almost no sense of the theme of the story, which starts up here. It's just a little point. Throughout the middle of the story, the hero and the opponent come into increasing conflict. So they're moving closer to each other this whole time. And as they move closer together, the theme becomes more apparent as they build up to this like big battle climax moment. Truby says, for most of a good story, the theme is largely hidden. It is quietly growing in the minds of the audience, and it will hit with full force at the end. So you hit this battle endpoint, and the main character has in the beat sheet what's known as like the Dark Knight moment. This is typically where they have their moral self-revelation. They realize the theme that they've been coming up against this whole time, the choice that they have to make now, the moral decision. Are they going to do the thing that will help them ultimately move on or grow or achieve the thing that they want? Or are they not going to be able to do it? And Truby says, when you do it like this, because the theme has been expressed primarily through structure, it seems to emerge from the very soul of the audience, not to have been imposed upon them like a tiresome sermon. And I think this is just really fascinating to think about. And so for our last exercise of the evening, I want us to, I think my last exercise for many of these has involved the character web, but write down your main characters who might appear in your story's character web. How do each of them interact with the theme differently? If you're not sure, begin just with the hero and their main opponent, and then see if you can expand your themes to the other characters in your web. So we will do this one for 10 minutes as well. We'll check back in at the 13. About time. Nicole said, I have a scene where all the characters are at a wake. I didn't realize how easily I could work in the 3 themes I listed in the previous exercise. That's what I love about these workshops. Yay. Oh, and I missed his comment earlier when we were talking about, I believe it was like the 8th bullet point in Carl Iglesias's 9 tips for keeping the theme subtle, where it was like color and leitmotif and symbols. Andrew said that last technique makes me think of the leaves in Heartstopper that follow Nick and Charlie when they do something brave for themselves and their relationship. Totally. All right. Thank you so much for watching tonight, everyone. It was tricky to boil theme down into just an hour. I feel like
great.
We could talk about for a long, long time. I really appreciate everyone coming and for all of your useful insights. Does anyone have any final thoughts on theme? No.
I'm thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a theme thought, but Megan, as a heads up, last week when you were away, when I hit the button to get out, it was the longest delay we've had in a very long time, to the point where people in the comments were like, you guys are still here. Like, I know.
That's because I wasn't here. I put a curse on it so that you would all stress out.
I hope it's that and not StreamYard shaking things up on us again.
Yeah.
It was actually like a relief to be the one to hit the button. Like, I knew I had hit it, so I knew it wasn't me, but I also couldn't make it end.
Yeah, the rest of us are just like.
Yeah, well, the secret is I wave with one hand until the button is clicked, and then I wave with 2 hands. So if I'm waving with 2 hands, I've already clicked the button.
Good to know your code.
Yeah, now you all know. Oh, we had a comment from Nicole. Said, I draw out the protagonist and the opponent's chart, and my MC is connected to all 3, while one of my opponents isn't connected to the other 2 at all. So I'll work on that this week. Fun. Yeah. One more reminder at the end of the chat. 2 weeks, we are breaking down Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It's a reminder for everyone watching and also all of us that if we're going to reread it, we got 2 weeks. We'll be back next week with another virtual write-in. Do some writing sprints. Maybe get to use some of the things that we've brainstormed today, hopefully. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you all have an amazing week, and we will see you later. And hopefully the chat will go off air when I click the button. Thanks, everyone. Bye.